Hello, this is Rev Brad, and you're listening to the Soccer Chaplains United podcast from the Touchline. I'm really pleased to have with me this week special guest Rod Underwood. This is part one of a four-part series. It's part of a longer interview that Rod and I did at the beginning of August. Rod, for those of you that don't know, is a former pro player. Currently, he's head coach of Chattanooga FC, a team that plays in NISA, the National Independent Soccer Association. It's a league here in the U.S. Chattanooga just won the NISA Independent Cup a few weeks ago, and they've been on a tear in the league. Rod also serves on the Soccer Chaplains United Board of Directors. A few weeks ago, he shared with us his personal mission statement, his life statement. He tries to live this out as he works as coach, husband, and father, and I thought it'd be great to have him on the podcast. Well, this week in part one, Rod talks about his early days in the game of soccer and how he came to play. From his mom taking on first-time coaching duties all the way to the pro leagues back in the 90s. Rod has a wonderful journey that many of us familiar with soccer back in those days can relate to. So thanks for listening. We get underway right after this.
He's found the space, and he's found the back of the net.
Just a little off foot, thinking he's going to go far post. Not strong enough with his right hand.
Whips that one in. Far post, almost made him ends, and they have. He has the hat-trick. The second in his career. The third of the night. The hat-trick hero.
Talked about you're not going to be able to sustain that kind of pressure.
To the corner. Goes towards the near post. And you're the angle, and what a goal! What a goal!
All right. Well, Rod, welcome to the podcast today. Great to have you on.
Well, thank you for having me. Excited about it.
Yeah, this is exciting. I think, Rod, you are the first. You're the first board member. You're a board member for Soccer Chaplains United. I think you are the first board member to be on the podcast. So I don't.
Okay.
I wish I came with like we should have a prize for you or something, like some honor or something. But Rod, for our listeners that may or may not know you, I mean, it's pretty easy to find you online and to read a little bit about you. But give us a little bit of your biography, a little bit of your life and story, and yeah, just kind of tell us like life growing up, football, soccer, how you got involved in the game, and how some of this all began.
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved in the game all my life, really. I got involved when I was like 6 years old or so, somewhere around there, like most soccer players these days. But mine was all accidental because at that time, I mean, I never even saw what a soccer ball looked like. I didn't really know anything about soccer. And I was my neighbor. They were football players, American football players. And my dad was a coach. He asked me to play on their team, but you had to meet a certain weight requirement. I was too little, so I didn't play, and so I was not interested in playing anywhere else because that was my friend. And you know how you start young, you want to play on your friend's team, and especially your dad, right? That's how most people get involved in sports, right? Through relationships and friendships, and it kind of grows from there. But within a short amount of time, I went to school, and there was a big sign up that says play soccer, and I was at the age where I just want to do something. I want to play athletics.
But it wasn't basketball. It wasn't American football. Like you landed on soccer. That's just interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, in the world's eyes, it was just haphazard by chance. But we all know that doesn't exist. So, that was definitely orchestrated by God for sure. But so I showed up, and literally, I had never seen a soccer ball in my whole life. I didn't know I didn't even know what it was. I just knew that it was a sport. And then the difficult part was nobody else knew what soccer was either. So there were no coaches. It was nothing, right? But my mom and her friends stepped up to be the coach, and they knew less than we did. Which we knew nothing. But yeah, it was a great experience. I mean, that's how it really got started. And I just remember because when we first moved to Atlanta I call Atlanta home, but I was actually born in New Orleans, but I grew up in Atlanta, right? We moved there when I was pretty young. But my birthplace is New Orleans, but I grew up in Atlanta. If you've ever been to Atlanta, right? If you get off on Camp Creek Parkway where the airport is, we moved to these apartments, and those apartments are still there to this day. And this was like in the early 70s.
Wow.
So, but yeah, so, and then after, I can't, probably a year or two, we stayed there. Then we moved out to the suburbs. And soccer in the suburbs at that time was growing. It was big. And I signed up to play soccer at the local YMCA.
Wow.
And then and then from there it was, had these two coaches, Mr. Gentry and Mr. Clay. They were just like, they love sports, they love kids, and they do anything for the kids. And it was around soccer, right? And to this day, right, they are like two guys that really believed in me and really just like helped me. And, when my parents couldn't take me to practice, take me to training, they were there. And then, I couldn't make it to games, they would come. They really championed me all the way. And then at that time, there was no middle school, right? In Atlanta, there was no middle school. So high school started 8th grade, right? So about that time, I went to high school. And then a guy by the name of, and in between, I had lots of other coaches. I had a coach from Argentina, and he was just like, a coach same kind of coach, right? He knew the game, right? Grew up and born and raised in Argentina, but he owned a landscaping business, and all of us came from, middle class to, we definitely didn't come from a lot of means, the guys on the team. So he owned a landscaping business, and, at my age, there were really no rules about when you can work and not.
Okay.
Because we'd help him for the landscaping, he'd pay for our soccer fees and any tournaments. That's how we survived, right? That's how we did it on that team. And it was a pretty good little team. I mean, I can remember back getting the state championships. I can't remember if we ever won or not, but we're always pretty good. And I remember going to regionals with that team and that kind of thing. And but then when I got to high school, by then Carl Rosenbaum, he was really like, he was our teacher, but he was also a soccer guy. He went to George Washington University in DC, and he had been around the game. And he just really he was the guy that really supported me. And really, he was the guy that really helped me get a scholarship to play at Furman, right? Because education was really important. And, I can remember everything from writing the essay to get into school and taking the right classes so you're going to be eligible to play, and have the opportunity to, even taking SAT prep courses. He made sure that you were in those things. And
nice.
He was just but he was also just wanted you to be the best. And he really was the guy that championed me to really, go to Furman. And Furman was a life-changing experience, because that was the first time I had sort of really lived in a different world. Because Furman, they say Furman is it's at that time it was an expensive school, and it's still expensive, but not like what it is to go some of the Ivy League schools. But Furman was a school where in athletics, besides football and basketball, if you didn't have the grades, you couldn't get in. It just wasn't going to happen. So
now, Rod, you were the first African American to play soccer at Furman. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, are you talking about you showed up and it's just everybody's white, or what was that?
It wasn't really to be fair, I had no idea, right? I mean, I only found out later when someone told me that. I mean, because my life has always been my parents were like my mom, she just taught us how to love people, and my dad taught us how to work hard, right? That was just what it was. And there was really no judgment of people, what they look like, who they were. It was just simply just be with people and just be interconnected, just because we're people, right? And being in soccer that time, there weren't very many Black players. As a youth player, you didn't really play with many Black players, not till high school that really start to change. And so I always grew up in that. I grew up in that environment of I was always the minority in the group. So going to Furman wasn't like anything new. So I just didn't notice anything. I mean, I was oblivious. I had no idea.
How did the team treat you? I mean, did you feel like one of the team, or did you feel like, kind of outsider because of where you grew up and how you got there and where you came from?
No, I didn't feel like an outsider at all. I mean, it was just the guy, John Tart. I mean, John Tart was like, John was much older than us. That's how, I mean, my year at 1985 was the second year of athletic soccer scholarships at Furman.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it was all starting new, right? It was new. John had played at soccer at Furman, and when he graduated, he got the job, the coach. I mean, he wasn't much older than us. And he was another guy. He just was a guy, right? He just treated us with the utmost respect, and it was like, and then it also helped too. We kind of had at that time, we had an international kind of team. We had a Welsh guy, and then we had a French guy. And so we all came from various backgrounds on the team, right? So that helped, right? And funny story, the guy that's the Welsh guy, he's now the assistant manager at Crystal Palace with Patrick Vieira, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, he's still a good friend. We still talk we talk a fair amount. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, so that was just kind of the group of guys that we were there. So I never felt like an outsider, right? And maybe I was treated like an outsider, but I just learning from my mom and my dad is just like, just live. That's all it was, right? But it was, I mean, but it was a life-changing experience because I got to meet people from different backgrounds, different cultures, different socioeconomic standards that were much higher than mine. So I learned a lot there, and that really sort of opened my eyes to like what life could be about and what you could achieve, right? My mom and dad was, you can achieve anything you want to do, and they always instilled that in me and my sister. But it was just something that going there, you could see it became tangible, right? It became tangible that you could achieve anything. So
you get close to the end of your college experience. You're getting the degree, and I mean, what you tell mom and dad, hey, I'm going to be a pro soccer player, or how did it go from finishing at Furman? Were you feeling a little bit of pressure? Like, a lot of the guys I work with today, even sometimes mom and dad tell them like, hey, when you're going to grow up and get a real job. Did you feel any of that from your folks, or were they like, was your family, was everybody kind of supportive? And then, or what was that transition period like, graduating from Furman and getting ready to step into the new challenge of the world? Because I'm trying to think of the pro leagues that were around back then.
There was nothing. I mean, the reality for me was, so I grew up in the big league was the NASL, so the New York Cosmos, the LA Aztecs, all these teams. So you got to watch Pelé play. You got to watch, the assistant manager who was at Man City, I think he's still there, Brian Kidd. You can go down the list of all these guys that you got a chance to watch and play. And so my dream was always to be a professional player. But when I was coming to the end, there was really no professional opportunity besides indoor soccer, right? Indoor was where the money was. But even the big NASL indoor leagues was really waning. And then there was a new league that started up. And then, it was a team in Atlanta. I tried out for that team. And then my first year professional was the first year of outdoor soccer in 1990 for the USL. That was the very first year. So the guy, he was a coach at Marshall University in West Virginia, and we played them. And he asked myself and the Welsh guy, hey, I'm going to get the job in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Never been to Albuquerque, right?
Yeah.
And he said, hey, we want you guys to come out and play, right? So we went to Albuquerque.
What was that like back in the day? Because this is like early 90s, right?
This is 1990. That was the first year.
Wow.
So that was the first year, but the league was really big because they had the old APSL or the whole A League, and then they had the USL. And that first year between the APSL, the A League, and the USL, there's probably 30 teams, East and West. It was massive.
Okay.
I mean, so give me an idea, right? So you think of the Western Conference of MLS,
Yeah.
most of those teams are in. Most of those teams are in. You think of the Eastern Conference for MLS, most of those teams are in. That's how crazy it is.
Wow.
If you go do the history, right, you will really see it, right? And then you start to like go through the history of the USL. Like Columbus had a USL team. So, Cincinnati had a USL team. I remember going to Cincinnati and playing, right? So you start to think about all this stuff. Colorado had a USL team. Colorado Foxes.
Yeah, the Foxes.
Yeah, you go down. I mean, there were teams everywhere.
So Rod, just to help our folks like get this, like, how much are guys making? Like, are they making a decent wage, or are they like?
It all depends on what team you played for and who you were, right? For me and our team, I mean, we did okay, right? We weren't making bank, but we could pay our bills and we could have a little bit of money, right? So it wasn't like it was just crazy amount of money, but like even in those leagues, right? Eric Winalda was playing in the league at the time, right? So the San Jose Earthquakes, you had guys like him in the league, right? On the East Coast, in the later years, you had guys like Chris Ormus and Tony Miola playing in the league, right? So it wasn't like it was a shabby league, and just depend on where you lived, what team. Some teams you're making $50 a game, $50 appearance fee, $50, $50 if you win, right? And maybe if you're a striker, $50 goal bonus. So the best you could do is $200 a game, right?
Okay.
But then there was other guys on monthly salaries making $2, $3, $4 grand a month at that time.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
now are these teams too? Like, I've heard some stories back in the day. Maybe it was indoor, but I've heard some stories like guys going in the locker room halftime and lighting up a cigarette or chugging a beer back. Like, was it kind of like that, or no? It was more professional.
I never personally experienced that, but I've heard those stories. I never saw it. Never happened in our locker room.
Okay.
But I've heard the same stories. I've never personally seen it. But I mean, there were definitely smokers, right? Not so much in our team, but other teams, right? I mean, you would see there were guys that were smokers, smoking at halftime, smoking before the game. You could see those things. But I never saw it in our locker room.
Okay. So what point? So you're playing. How many years did you play as pro?
I played 6 years professionally. Yeah, I played 6 years.
And at some point, you start to change. You feel this inclination maybe toward coaching, because you were a player coach for a little bit, weren't you? Well, hey everyone, Rev Brad here. Thanks for listening. We're going to stop right there. Next week, part 2. Rod's going to talk about going from player to coach and how his journey with soccer and his love for the game continues to grow to what it is today. So join us again next week. Thanks for listening. This is Rev Brad coming to you from the Touchline.